Charlotte the Scientist is Squished, written by Camille Andros and illustrated by Bree-Ann Farley. Charlotte was a serious scientist. Protective glasses, a lab coat, and a magnifying glass were her essential scientific equipment, plus a clipboard for important notes. Charlotte solved problems by conducting experiments that followed the scientific method. And Charlotte had a problem. She was squished. She was squished at the table. She was squished in the tub. Hey! And sometimes she was even squished on the toilet. It had become impossible to conduct her experiments. Her test tubes were taken, her beakers got broken, and her specimens were spoiled. Charlotte needed some space. Time to use the scientific method. Step 1. Ask a question. How can I get some space around here? Step 2. Form a hypothesis. Hypothesis. If I can get rid of my brothers and sisters, I will have room to be a real scientist. Step 3. Test the hypothesis. Experiment. She tried an experiment to make everyone disappear. But it didn't work. She tried another experiment to make herself disappear. But that didn't work either. Bang, clang, boom, keep out. If she was going to get some space, she would have to go there. Step 4. Make and record observations. Charlotte was no longer squished at the table. She was no longer squished in the tub. Wanted on the toilet. Space was splendid. Observations, meals, baths, toilet, important experiments. Finally, step 5. Draw conclusions. She had all the room she needed to conduct very important experiments using her protective glasses, lab coat, and magnifying glass. Her test tubes were tidy, her beakers looked brilliant, and her specimens were sparkling. Her hypothesis was correct. She finally had room to be a scientist. The only problem was there was no one to talk to at mealtime. No one to blow bubbles with in the tub. And what was Charlotte supposed to do when she ran out of toilet paper? Hello? Space was lonely. Back to step 2. Form a new hypothesis. If I can have friends in space, then I won't be lonely, and I can be a real scientist. Time for more experiments. Charlotte tried chocolate, but it was too tempting. The balloons kept floating away. And robot bunnies were poor conversationalists. They got ruined in the bathtub and tangled in the toilet paper. Boop. Charlotte missed her family. She even missed being squished. So she tried one last experiment. and reached a new conclusion. Charlotte didn't need outer space. She just needed her own space. I hope you all enjoyed the story about Charlotte, the scientist. She kind of reminds me of Ada from last week. They ask a lot of questions, right? Just like scientists, they start with a question, something they're wondering about. So our question is, you can barely see my E right there, do leaves breathe? We're going to just do a little bit of an experiment to figure out if leaves breathe and if we can maybe even see that happening. So we need to form a hypothesis, just like Charlotte did in the story. Here's the word hypothesis. And I always like to say it's like a thinking guess, an educated guess, a smart guess. It's not just something that you just randomly just think of and pop out of your mouth really, really quickly. You give it some thought. You think about nature. You think about how other things might breathe. Think about how things grow. You're thinking about your world. And then you form a hypothesis. So I want you to think about that for a minute. Do leaves breathe? Think to yourself, I wonder. And see if you can form a hypothesis. Like, yes, I do think leaves breathe because, or no, I don't think leaves breathe, and maybe why. Okay, so you think about that in your head. I'm not going to write my hypothesis down on here. I'm just going to let you make your own hypothesis without mine swaying you. And then we're going to get ready to do a little experiment. And when we do an experiment, we have to gather the materials that we need for this experiment. So I'm going to share the materials that we need today. We are going to need a live leaf. That means when you're ready to do this experiment that you might find, and check with your parents first or whoever you're with, a live plant inside your house that you could take a leaf from, or go right outside in your yard to look for a fresh leaf from a tree or a bush. Maybe you could pick a couple leaves. I sent my kids out to gather some fresh leaves for me, and they brought me quite a few different leaves from our yard. So I'm going to choose a couple. So in a minute, you'll go get a leaf. And you will go get inside your house some kind of clear container. So I am going to use just some of these clear Tupperware containers. I also have a clear jar, could be a bowl. Okay, so you'll want to maybe gather one or two of those depending on how many leaves you pick. You are going to need some room temperature water. So not freezing cold water, not hot water, just normal temperature water, kind of in the middle. And if you have a magnifying glass, you could use a magnifying glass if you want to observe closely. I didn't bring mine home with me today, so I'm just going to observe closely with my eyes and really leaning in to see what happens in a little bit. And let's see, you also need a small rock. So if you have two leaves, you're going to want maybe two small little rocks, okay, or something small like that that could help weigh the leaf down and submerge it in the water. You will also end up needing a sunny spot. So if it's sunny outside, you can take it outside to do this, or you can put it maybe in a windowsill or somewhere where it's going to get some sunlight, okay? And then part of your experiment is going to be to wait, okay? Sometimes scientists have to wait. So you're actually going to wait a few hours, and then you're going to observe and see what you notice, what is happening, okay? All right, let me pause the video. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to get it ready, and then I will add another video below this one. That way you can do the experiment and you can observe and notice, and then you can come back to the second video later in a couple hours and watch and kind of hear some talk about what we saw and why it happened and what we noticed, okay? So once you have your container with some room temperature water, you will take the first live leaf that you want to use and you're going to set it in the container. Okay, so now that you put your leaf in your container of water, you're going to take a small rock and set it on the leaf so that the leaf submerges, that means goes all the way down in the bottom of the water. Let me see if I can do it. There we go. Okay, good. I've got some more science helpers in here. So Bennett is going to help me. He went and collected all these live leaves. I'm going to let him place this leaf in the water. Here you go. Yep, and then Annie, you can come help me with the next step. So you're going to put that leaf in the water, and it's floating right now. So we want it to submerge. So I am going to ask Annie to pop up here. Can you back up? Thank you. And Annie, will you put this little rock in the middle of the leaf? And originally when I did it on the other one, it kind of fell off. So I just moved it and set it on top to make sure it submerges. We want the leaf to go all the way down to the bottom. Yep. There you go. Good. Okay. All right. I'm going to show you guys the view of the leaf down in there. Okay. So you can now see that my rock is on top of the leaf and it's submerged in the water. Here's the other one. I have a couple more that I'm going to try to do. So you're going to do that, and then you're just going to let these things sit near the sunlight, right, for a couple hours. A couple hours is like 2 hours, and then you can come back and check. And I want you to see what's happening. What do you notice? If you want to check in a couple times before that, you can. And if you're thinking like a scientist, you probably have a little piece of paper and a pencil or something where you want to jot down maybe a picture or a drawing of what this looks like right now, and then what happens in a couple hours. And maybe you'll write down some notes. That part of it is collecting data, right? Observations, what you notice. And then you'll use that information to form your conclusion. Okay, so just like I said, after you do that little experiment that I showed you, you get to try, you'll make some observations in a couple hours, and then you'll be able to form a conclusion. And after that, you can come back and watch the second video that I put in, and hopefully we'll have found some information about our question. Sorry, the light's shining on it. Do leaves breathe? Have fun, scientists.